Aaron Cheruiyot, Senator for Kericho. Welcome. We received your invitation, your memorandum. So we want to listen to you. In total, you have 15 minutes timed from now. Once you do it, you pause once you're done, so that the members can ask you one or two questions. Then we proceed to the next group. So I think if that's agreeable, Honorable Chair, we proceed. Karibu, you just introduce yourself and say what your issues are. Karibu.
Okay, Chair, good morning. I'm Evans Otieno Logoa, the Chairperson Interface Community Affairs from Super South Sub-County, Homa Bay County. I'm the Chair, so our Secretary will give a brief on behalf of the organization. Thank you.
Yes, good morning, the Secretary General for Interface Community Help Desk. I would like to thank the National Dialogue Committee for deeming it fit to give us the opportunity to address and give our views on behalf of the residents of Homa Bay County. Without much ado, whereas you've given us 15 minutes to deliberate on these issues, I think it is prudent that we obey the rules of the game by the National Dialogue Committee. So I'll first begin by stating as follows. Whereas you had highlighted 5 issues that were to be canvassed by the Kenyan citizens, we deemed it fit, and I think it is us who came first as members of the public, that we felt that the dialogue was not people-centered, but it was leader-centered. But luckily enough, it was prudent for the Learned Council, who is also the former Vice President of the Republic, say that we need to come and give our views via our memorandum, of which we also say thank you to the panelists. I'll begin by stating as follows, but I'll not read everything because of time. The thematic areas with regard to electoral justice and related matters, restructuring and the constitution of the IABC, we had the following recommendation. 1, there is need, and I'm pleading again that there is need. Those are 3 words. That we need to abolish what is the so-called National Tallying Center. Because where we are in, the citizens of the Republic of Kenya have always been participating in voting, but the problem, it is from the National Tallying Center, not at the polling station. So as we are saying, we need to have what is known as the polling station tallying center. Because if all votes are being casted right from the ground, what is the need, or what is it that the chairman is going to do? What is it that is going to verify? Because already the results have been found right from the ground. So the reason as to why we deemed it fit that we need to abolish the National Tallying Center is that this is where the problem has always begun. Kenyans have not been fighting at the polling station. They have been fighting at the National Tallying Center with leaders who have been elected. So for us to avoid that sham, we need to abolish the so-called National Tallying Center. That is 1. 2, we are saying that we need to creation of youth members of parliament elected as the same as women representatives, including persons with disability. Why? Article 28 is not being observed by political parties of this country, whereby you will just find that they handpick certain fellas to represent the interest of the youth. So that is why we are saying persons with disability, youth representatives are supposed to be elected. The other issue we had about the electoral justice is that Article 97 of the Kenyan Constitution, we found out that when it comes to impeachment of the president, the powers goes to the members of parliament who have been elected members of parliament, and members of the Senate. As we are saying that if the sovereign power belongs to the people, then it is the people to decide if a leader doesn't work for them. And the reason as why we are saying this is that the system we have in this country is a presidential system, not a parliamentary system. And the question is, why is it that when it comes to impeachment of the president, it now goes to the parliamentary system? It needs to come from the people, because all these characters have been elected by the people of Kenya. So that is why we are saying we need calling them characters. Your Honor, if you look at the terminology character, it refers to so many things, and it depends with English wording, and that is why I normally use the term characters. Even me, I'm a character. The same should also apply to the governors and ward reps. They are supposed to be recalled by the people. Not governors are being recalled by the MCAs. That is what we felt. The other thing we heard about the outstanding constitutional matters with regard to Article 43, what we found out is that we would like to request, especially the members of parliament who are representatives, you always ensure that you pass legislations, not papers. Papers are not, and these taxes and levies can only be reduced in petroleum products in order to improve the efficiency of domestic refineries. So justification which we have with regard to this is that our peers, the neighboring countries, those are the landlocked countries, Uganda, Rwanda, and Burundi. Their cost in terms of fuel is much lower than us, who have an inland port. So that should be a big worry to us. How comes that a landlocked country, its petroleum levies are lower, and a country which is not landlocked like Kenya, which is cherished and respected amongst all nations in the world, its taxes and levies are more? It is pinching on the economy. The other thematic area we had is about fidelity to political parties, coalitions, and law on multi-party democracy. On this, we are saying that this is already captured in Section 543 of the Political Parties Act. So the provision itself lays the ground and management and membership of political parties. So justification, we underscore that the fact that democracy is enhanced both by the ruling party and opposition and not weakened in the delivery and oversight from both parties. So the other thematic area which we have is thematic area 4, that is about entrenchment of funds in the Constitution, that is the NGCDF, Senate Oversight Fund, and NGAF. The role of Parliament is oral, and I'm repeating, the role of Parliament is oral. That is oversight, representation, appropriation, and legislation. To this effect, we would like to say that the Supreme Court of the Republic of Kenya pronounced itself on this and hence makes the matter moot. Reason being, it defeats the principles of the rule of law with regard to public finance. So the other issue which we have with regard to this is that help, and I'm repeating, help, for the third time, help should be entrenched in the Kenyan Constitution. Majority of students are suffering and people are not talking about their plight. For us, we would like to categorically state that all students in both public universities and tertiary institutions and public colleges are entitled to help. So help should be included in the Constitution so that no Kenyan student is left behind. The other thing we are saying on this is that government-sponsored persons who are earning salaries and who would like to further their studies should not, and I'm repeating, should not be catered for by the government. Reason being, already they're earning their stipends and some of the youths do not have jobs and they don't have their salaries. So for this, we would like that government-sponsored persons who are going to pursue their studies or furthering their studies should not be given help they cater for themselves from their salaries. The other thing we are saying is that the funding model for every cluster in the universities should be the same across all public institutions. What we came to realize is that you will find a student who is pursuing law in the University of Nairobi, the amount of fee is paying, and the student who is also pursuing the same course at Mason University, Egerton University, OJ Quat is totally distinct. For us, we feel it that for education not to be discriminative and the dignity of the Kenyan students to be respected and protected, there is a need for the funding model cluster to be the same across public institutions. About cross-cutting issues, we had the big elephant in the room, which is making the Kenyan youths to walk with their socks torn. You might think that it is a tongue, but it is not, because the socks are torn. Is that any person charged with economic crime should be remanded and all his assets should be frozen until the matter is concluded. Justification is this: persons or characters who have been found to have embezzled public funds are still going back to the corridors of justice, seeking for the cash they have looted from the members of the public they are using in buying justice. So for us, we felt that any person who is charged with economic crime should be remanded and all his assets should be frozen until the matter is concluded.
This will be denied bail.
Yes.
No, what we are saying is that whereas we are talking about bail and bond terms, and with regard to the issue that we say in law that you are the guilty and innocent, already you've been found and charged with the Economic Crimes and Anti-Economic Crimes Act, and your salary is placed at a half. What is it that you expect? That is double speak. For any law student, that is double speak. Because if you say that you are in need of bail and bond terms, and at the same time Economic Crimes Act section 52, it is saying ukipatikana uko na hii hatia, half of that you are given pay. Already it has been justified. At umepatikana na that hatia, what is it that you expect again? Should you get that bail, bond and terms? Anchored on that. That is from the school of thought where we are reasoned with that. On the other issue we have, your honors and the landed council who are present here, is about Article 234 of the Kenyan Constitution. And if you may allow me, Article 234I, the functions and powers of the Commission. We have a problem with the Public Service Commission. Public Service Commission is not a tribunal. It is not a tribunal. And you will find, if you read it says that Article 234(2)(I) hear and determine appeals in respect of county government's public service. So this one makes us to stand in limbo. County governments are autonomous. We have what is called as the County Public Service Board. So it seems to us that the Public Service Commission has usurped the powers of the County Public Service Boards. So they don't have a biting teeth. Instead, it is them who are being beaten by the big animal, so-called the Public Service Commission, which does not have a tribunal. We know very well that NEMA, National Environmental Management Authority, it has a tribunal which has been anchored in law. So for us, we would like Article 234I to be removed from the Kenyan Constitution. The other thing we have is about the entrenchment of state offices, the office of the official opposition. We are saying that the office should be created in Parliament by an act, being seconded in votes, tallied, hence the road should be clearly indicated. We found out this, that even right now as we sit, even right now as the National Dialogue Committee sits, the National Dialogue Committee did not pass the grey test. I so call it the grey test because it is easier for us to identify a green horse in a white grass, but not the vice versa. Not a green grass and then we identify the white horse. So for us on this, we are saying that this will ensure that the government is checked by properly and best legislations as provided for, and then we avoid the issue so-called the big elephant in the corridors of debates, which is known as Tuonane Badai. Because Tuonane Badai slogan is going to be reduced in the corridors of debates. So for us, we would like to attest and confirm that the issues which have been highlighted by the National Dialogue Committee, the so-called NDC, is anchored on Article 10, 2B, and the issues highlighted promotes fundamental gains which have been made by the Kenyan Constitution. What is left for us as a country is to ensure that we retain our global respect position, of which our beacon, which has been and I still cherish as a citizen who was born and bred in this republic, which is of peace, love and unity, that should be long-lasting during our stay and our living in this planet Earth called world, and this country called Kenya with all its counties. The other issue,
just to remind you,
yes,
I had mentioned to you that you have 15 minutes.
Yes, you have.
Which you have exhausted.
Only give me 2 minutes, if I may.
It leaves me in a difficult situation because there's still.
We have 4 minutes remaining.
You still have time for this panelist also, unless you want to conclude your remarks.
I want to conclude
without any questions from the panelists.
Yes, I wanted to add an issue on presidential term.
Okay.
Our concern is that this ill fight has been coming out whereby citizens of the Republic cannot realize their social and economic rights. It is cause of politics. So for us, we say that a president needs to go for a single term of 10 years. 10 years. We wanted the president to go for a single term of 10 years. If he finishes, he goes and parks together with this deputy president. That is our thought. And the other issue we wanted to raise is that we had a position from the Suba community. They've met the population quota, of which they require a county. And also us in Homa Bay Town, we've met the population quota, whereby we want the Homa Bay Town constituency to be divided so that we can have Kanyada constituency. For us, we've met the population quota. And this one will make us to realize the issue, the big issue before the corridors of debate, whereby Kimani Chungwa is saying, Honorable Kimani Chungwa is saying, majority leader, one man, one coin, or one shilling, one man. So for us, for this to be realized even to us, we have to create a super county.
I use that in, I have never said
He has also spoken about it. So thank you very much for having given us the opportunity. Asanteni sana.
He spoke
about it. We said that he's supposed to be created.
He spoke about it. So the presenters finished their time, but I'll just allow one question only from each side.
Okay.
Hassan, you'll take on behalf of this side.
No, just
then you'll tell me if there's a comment from this side.
Michael.
Yes, you're on. Yes.
No, you said we removed the National Tallying Center.
Yes.
Then how do we collect all these results from the polling stations and centers? Where do we tally them?
What we've heard about this from the scenarios of elections which have been held, the 3 elections, after the Maina Kiai's case, and what the judges had ruled upon, we saw it that normally at Bomas is where the fight is, not right at the polling station. So after all the results of the members of parliament have been declared, MCAs, governors, women reps and senators, everybody dashes to the National Tallying Center. So we're asking ourselves, why is it that everybody is dashing towards the National Tallying Centers and yet they are voted at the polling stations? So, for us to have a beautiful country, this country we cherish, honorable members, let us be candid enough and honest to ourselves so that future generations will not suffer the same fate.
But where do we then?
So tallying, that is what brings me to tell you about this. We have 47 counties, and this will bring the aspect part of the electoral colleges. So if we have like 64,000 polling stations in the entire republic, and presidential A has got 50,000, definitely he is supposed to be declared the president.
So you are saying you scrap the National Tallying Center?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and move it to electoral colleges.
Okay.
That is what we are saying.
You had said earlier on,
Yes.
that you don't want to see members of parliament impeaching a president.
Yes.
That should be left to the people.
The people, yes.
Do it themselves.
Yes.
But are you alive to the provisions of Article 1?
Yes, I am alive to it.
That allows the public, the people,
Yes.
to delegate their sovereign power
Yes.
to elected representatives.
The wording which is used in that given article, Landed Council, if I may, if you look at the sovereignty of the people, it says that all powers, all sovereign powers belongs to the people of Kenya and shall be, underline the wording shall, mandatory, be exercised only in accordance with this constitution. The people may, optional, may, optional. That is it, Your Honor. No, complete it, may exercise their sovereignty power either directly or through their democratically elected. So the wording, the conjunction may. Thank you very much. Yes. And I think that is a plain language in law.
Thank you, Michael.
Yes.
Any final question from the panelists before we let the representative from Homa Bay Interface Community help desk? You are satisfied? Okay. We may let him go.
Before he goes, let me go.
Before you go, maybe Michael, we shall let you go. Because may is optional. Before he goes, he may opt not to go.
Michael,
Yes,
very finally,
Yes.
you are seeking for the creation of a constituency to be named Kanyada
Yes.
out of the present day Homa Bay town
Yes.
constituency.
Yes.
What would the other constituency then be named?
For instance, Your Honor, you come from Ugenya constituency.
I come from Ugunja.
Ugunja, yes, Ugunja constituency.
Yes.
So Ugunja is for Ugunja clansmen. In their interest, it is being catered for. Right now, our counties are experiencing the rural-urban migration, and you will find that we have the local natives, like honorable member seated next to you, Arun. He has got the Ogie community. Yes, Ogie can also have their constituency because they have got their own challenges they face. So for us, the urban setups, we find that right now we have like the Tomboy universities, we have students from all walks of life. Right now the university has taken a portion of roughly like 20,000 plus, if you include with the local residents who are working within, and then the local natives will be left with no representation. So that is the reason as to why we are saying that each and every area has to be represented, including even Soba County.
So the constituency will be called what? That was a question.
No, the constituency we want is Kanyada constituency. There's no problem.
The remaining part of Homa Bay?
Homa Bay town constituency.
Okay.
Because it's a cosmopolitan.
Kanyaga now will comprise more of the super community in Homa Bay.
No, Kanyada constituency will comprise of the Kanyadians. The local Kanyaga,
I want to understand how it was.
Yes.
The Kanyadians.
Yes.
What you describe as the local natives.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, just hold on.
Yes.
Because you cut across the image of a very young and progressive Kenyan.
Yes,
As much as you have every right to advocate for the rights of the Kanyagians.
Yes.
And if we may consider the Kanyagians, and you who are natives of Homa Bay,
Yes.
Maybe you live in Nairobi,
Yes.
as a Kanyagian,
Yes.
and in another 5 to 10 years,
Yes.
where you live, there's a small community of Kanyagians.
Yes.
Are you then also going to demand another constituency for Kanyagians in Nairobi where you live?
No, Nairobi.
Let me just finish. Or would you want us to consider a situation where we don't have to split up our country into small fiefdoms of ethnic conclaves, clans, families? Because at the rate we are going, it looks like every other community wants their own county, others, clans want their own constituency, there are families that want their own wards. When and where shall we stop?
Your Honor, this one is being brought by the wordings of our elected leaders with what they say. For instance, if you say that a country belongs to shareholders, where is my share? Where is my share? Where is my share? And this doesn't go well with others because they just sit, but when it blows out, it becomes an issue. And we've seen it happening in other countries, including one
but
typical...
Michael, what I have heard being said is government has shareholding, not the country.
When you talk about the government, it's the people. Government for the people, by the people, with the people. So if you don't participate in electing a given government, do you have your share?
You have a share to get service and be served by that government
through camouflage.
But
let us be honest.
No, let me also be honest.
Yes,
Michael, because what has been said, and I know particularly what you are quoting, is that when you subscribe into a government by voting for it,
yes,
by supporting it,
yes,
but when a government is elected, it is elected to serve all the people of the country,
yes,
irrespective of who you voted for,
yes,
who you didn't vote for. And,
yes,
as an elected leader, I can tell you that
yes,
there are many people who never voted for me. At least 9,000 people did not vote, yes, for me, or close to another 60,000 people voted for me. And that is the essence of having our elections done through secret ballot. You do not know who voted for you, but when I am appointing people to my office,
yes,
then I would want to look at people who subscribe to my ideals and what I want to do. Yes. And therefore, I'll not go for Michael if Michael never voted for me to serve in my office, because he may not even want to push my agenda. And I think that's the genesis of that statement. But my question to you was very simple.
Yes.
When and where do we stop dividing and cutting our country in fiefdoms based on ethnicity, based on clanism and familial ties? Because if the Kanyagians want their own constituency,
yes,
you mentioned the Ogiets,
yes,
they're out here.
Even El Molos.
El Molos. We had the Sabauts from Tanzania,
yes,
and whereas they have every right to claim marginalization and everything, two of the people who are seated where you are seated have served. One is a deputy governor in Tanzania, another one I think was a former majority leader, former deputy speaker or the speaker of the county assembly.
Yes. In
the county they claim marginalization.
Yes.
So my question as to where it will stop, because must you as Kanyagians,
yes,
have your own constituency,
yes,
for you to be heard, or for you to feel that you're included in the leadership of the country? Whereas you are included by voting through universal suffrage. And I heard what you are telling Honorable Pio.
Yes.
That the people may delegate the authority.
Yes.
Not shall delegate.
Yes.
With that in mind, that we are in a country where we vote through universal suffrage. And I think that's the point you are advancing, that if we vote through universal suffrage, then to impeach a president, then it has to be done through universal suffrage. With that in mind, Kanyagians vote in Homa Bay, they will vote for whoever they vote for, and they are heard and they have their stake through an electoral process.
What I can say, Your Honor, if you may allow me, is that I wanted to give an example with one of the counties.
Final remark.
Final remark. That is Siaya County. You saw the composition whereby cabinet officers were being chosen. People from Gain, constituency are crying. They were left out. The directors also were being taken as chief officers. They were left out. So, with ministerial positions in the county government, they were left out. So, where does that put the people get? It's the same thing even as we were asking ourselves. So, what is this? But I think, from where I sit, because you participated in so many cadres and you've been sitting in most of the meetings, going out of the country, benchmarking on so many things. Leaders are problem solvers.
Just do a quick round of introductions. There are quite a number of new members you may not know. I'm sure you know Senator Mugeni Komo, Honorable Amina Alindi, Eugene, you don't need introduction. Opio, you don't need introduction. His Excellency, you definitely don't need. Senator Aaron, you don't need. You've been with him in Senate. Honorable Catherine Mwambilianga, Senator Omar, you've been with him in Senate. And of course, myself, we went to the school. So if I may introduce myself, school number 6177. So Karibu will give you we've been giving others about 20 minutes, but we want to propose we give you 10 minutes because we have a very heavy day today. You endeavor so that if you extend your 10 minutes, we go to about 15, and maybe 5 minutes for a few interventions here and there. Karibu.
10 minutes too short for Attorney General Emeritus, Senator Emeritus, and one went to this school, and he was number 1,700, and one was just thrown in, just to appear and fly out. So please give me time and be with me, because I think that your committee is very important. I thank you for inviting me to give my views to this important national dialogue. It is my prayer that you fully discharge your mandate for the well-being of our beloved country of ours depends on the issues you have identified for negotiations being successfully resolved. Let me start with the easiest, the establishment and entrenchment of the state offices. I support
And in fact, way back in April 1992, I published a constitutional amendment to have that office plus 2 deputy governors. And as you know, during the national negotiations which happened in 2007-8, again, we established that office. And as you also know, during the BPI process, mark you, the BPI was only challenged on procedure, how it was appointed. But the content of BPI are still there, and you can make reference to them. And the BPI, we did draft a constitutional amendment, and if you look at Article 107A, there we have provided for leader of opposition. And if you look at Part 2A, there we have provided for the post of Prime Minister and Deputy Prime Minister, which of course now is Prime Cabinet Secretary. Outstanding issues. Article 43 of the Constitution. Article 43 of the Constitution gives us economic and social rights. That particular article is similar to, and in fact I know I drafted it during the committee stage where I was a member. We borrowed from the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights. Therefore, the first thing which is important on that is to recognize that the primary responsibility to realize these rights lies on the government. A democratically elected government would have been voted into office on the basis of the manifesto and the pronouncement of its leaders on the policies and programs they would put in place to realize these rights once elected. The second point to take into account is that it is accepted that these rights are not immediately achievable due to the many reasons, including insufficient resources. Therefore, the responsibility on the shoulders of the government is to achieve these rights progressively. And there, the word progressively has been used both in our Constitution, Article 21(2) of the Constitution, if you read it, and also in the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, to which Kenya is a party. So, it is there. The number one issue, as you know, in Kenya today is the unprecedented high cost of living, which is causing unbearable suffering, misery, anxiety, and hunger among the populace in Kenya. As a prominent tech leader has stated, we are strangling the lives of the poor Kenyans. History is replete with examples where people in countries facing a national crisis come together to fight the threat. Mwalimu Julius Nyerere used to say that just as in UK, for example, everybody came together to face the threat to the nation caused by Germany, which led to the Second World War. So we in Africa are in a state of war, and it is a war against ignorance, poverty, and disease. And this war can only be won if we all come together. In this national crisis, it calls on the government and all the people to humble themselves and collectively and in a sober manner address the issue. I am therefore suggesting to this National Dialogue Committee that a national consultation on the national economic crisis be convened to come up with recommendations not only to ameliorate the high cost living costs, but also make people better understand the bitter medicine and hard decisions that must be taken to put the economy on the right track. Such a national consultation should include political leaders, religious leaders, professionals, economists, business and farming communities, opinion makers, etc. The national consultation should be convened immediately your report is approved by Parliament. Let me take this opportunity also to make reference to Article 204, so it touches on Article 43. And Article 204 provides for equalization of equalization fund, but it is targeted at groups which were discriminated against during the colonial time. And although marginalized areas is not defined in the Constitution, marginalized community is defined, and it makes reference to traditional community or indigenous community, etc. Since independence, we now have recent areas where one can say they are marginalized. And here I'm referring to, for example, slums in the urban areas have really spread. And now these slums are spreading into the rural areas where the living conditions are deplorable. I therefore recommend that a poverty alleviation fund be created to address the economic and social needs of the vulnerable groups in such areas. This will be implementing Article 43 as read with Article 21(3) of the Constitution, which makes specific reference to special measures being taken to assist the vulnerable people. And we don't have a specific fund for that, because one can argue that every government program is addressing that issue. But we have indigent Kenyans who are really suffering, and such a fund can focus itself on such people. Implementation of the 2/3 gender rule. There have been failed attempts to achieve the 2/3 gender rule. I do recall that in many of the drafts of the proposed constitution, a clause similar to Article 1772 of the Constitution, which applies to gender top-up in county assemblies after elections, depending on the number of persons elected, was provided for to apply to the National Assembly and the Senate. Somehow, although it was dropped in the process of discussions and so on, somehow that clause was removed, and that clause only remained in reference to county assembly. I just recommend that an article similar to Article 1772 be reintroduced to apply to the National Assembly and the Senate. This should be accompanied by a carrot and stick approach, particularly in policies and programs and legislation aimed at political parties, to encourage them to nominate women to elective seats in their strongholds. This will aim at having more women elected parliamentarians so that the top-up figure will be reduced and in the long run, hopefully eliminated. Electoral justice and related matters, restructuring and reconstitution of IEBC. This is a complex issue which demands that we think out of the box. This country has had basically three ways of appointing commissioners. The first is the government-controlled commission. Up to May 1992, the Electoral Commission was basically under the government. The Electoral Commission had, in fact, by a legal notice, delegated its constitutional function of conducting or supervising elections to the Attorney General, who had an officer in his office called the Supervisor of Elections, who in turn appointed district commissioners as returning officers. And when I became Attorney General, I was basically also now the chairman of the Electoral Commission. I was in charge of the elections in this Republic of Kenya. But I can tell you that I revoked that legal notice and restored the function of conducting elections to its rightful place, although the President continued to appoint the commissioners. Just before I revoked the legal notice, I was surprised when I was invaded in my office by all the opposition political parties and the leaders at around 6:37 p.m. as I was working. And I believe they came because of the Attorney General, but also because I was the person in charge of elections. They came with their key supporters. I don't know whether I can, I think most of you are young, not to work among the key supporters. At that, I can't think. I think a lot of joke. I think the only one who may qualify is.
I don't think I was. This is a timely and godly hour.
After the one was serious, I was treated in more university, I think, at that time, or maybe some private school in Mombasa. This was now in May of 1992. All the opposition political parties plus their key supporters came to my office and made it clear to me that I convey to the President that he disbands the Electoral Commission immediately and new members appointed with their involvement. In other words, they wanted to propose members and the President appoints. Of course, the clarion call at that time was no new Electoral Commission, no elections. To cut the long story short, and that would one day appear in my memoirs in an extenso, we discussed up to about 10 p.m. and they agreed on my proposal, which was in accordance with the Constitution as it was then. The proposal was that although the President had no constitutional powers to disband the Commission once appointed, however, the Constitution at that time provided only a minimum of members of the Electoral Commission. So consequently, he could appoint additional members. So I say the way I can help them is through that way, or advise the government. So we agreed that they should go and nominate, give me a list of persons from whom the President can, in his absolute discretion, appoint. I informed them that such persons should not be officials of the political party or any party, or be active members of their party or any party, or be persons known to belong to their party or any party. Furthermore, such persons should be persons of integrity, well respected in society, persons who had retired honorably from public or private sectors, or well-known senior professionals, or persons known for their independence of mind. In short, they should be persons of gravitas. As Nigerians would say, persons of legal luminaries. In view of the constitutional discretion vested in the President, I asked each leader not to give me a list where they have all sat down and agreed, but each leader had to submit a list to me separately. I can tell you, within 2 days, I received from each letter suggesting, in fact, there was no list which had suggested names of other 12. Some had 16, 14, 15, whatever. And the letters, I can tell you, must be there in the Attorney General's office, were actually signed by the leaders, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, Honorable Mwai Kibaki, Kijana Wamalwa, Martin Shikuku, and so on and so on. At that time, we were dealing with about 9 opposition political parties, but these were the major ones. And the leaders applied their mind to it and produced those lists. That point is going to be important on how a political party can nominate. It should really be at a very high level, under the signature of the president, party leader, and so on. Now, I examined all those letters. I can tell you that 3 or 4 names appeared in nearly all the lists. 3 or 4 names. My memory is going short, but I know Margaret Kenyatta was one of them who appeared in almost all the lists. There was Harry Mule, a former PS Treasury, again, whose name appeared in nearly all the lists. And there were others. I can tell you the president, when I showed him and analyzed the situation, he had no problem whatsoever in appointing the names which were common in all the lists. And that's how the additional names to the Electoral Commission were appointed, in addition to those already appointed by the president earlier. After the IPPG of 1997, it was agreed that KANU nominates for appointment 11, and the opposition parties nominate for appointment 10, and they did so. And the Electoral Commission was the largest I ever known, had 21 members. You know, elected or appointed by the president on the nomination of political parties, direct nominations, political parties. And like before, in my situation where I said, give me a number of names and we shall decide from there. They were just appointing a name and that is it. Of course, you'll agree with me that 21 members are a bit unwieldy. But let me remind you that this is the Electoral Commission which delivered the 2002 general elections, whose results were uploaded and accepted locally here in Kenya, regionally and internationally. And I believe it was the only general election in the multi-party era, and that is after we amended the Constitution, where no election petition was filed challenging the election of the president. So what I'm trying to say, when you're considering these issues in a sober manner, don't try to demonize the fact that political parties should not nominate. I think that should be on the table, because our history has shown it, as I've seen it. The chairman, so I mentioned about the first government control electoral commission, the second commissions nominated by political parties, and now the third is what we have been experiencing since in 2007. The third is the so-called commissions which are expert-based, where the election board, through advertising, interviewing, and selecting the members on merit. This has been Kenya's experience under the new constitution. This looks good on paper and has many points in its favor. However, the electoral commissions so appointed have not inspired confidence up to now. But its major merit is that the members are supposed to be experts, they are non-partisan, and not affiliated to a political party. However, we have noticed that the selection board, the Raila agree, even on method of scoring points, and that method can also be interfered with by ensuring that a member gives very high points to the one he favors and very low to the one he doesn't like, so that when it comes to average, somebody goes through. And in fact, I believe you have heard here allegations that even on the last electoral commission, some of the commissioners authority through that system. That some of the commissioners were appointed as a result of maneuverings by certain political powers or political or eminent politicians. So it can also be manipulated, in other words. To cut a long story short, what is my proposal? My proposal and recommendations, having studied the three matters of appointing commissioners, is that we have a mixed system of some commissioners nominated by political parties and some commissioners appointed through a refined system that we now have. In this way, the benefits from both ways can be realized. I suggest that what I'm suggesting here can be refined in further discussions, particularly amongst you and amongst the political parties and other key stakeholders. I suggest that the top 2 or 3 political parties should nominate people for appointment, direct appointment to the Electoral Commission. And they should, the top 2 or 3 should nominate 1 commissioner each. And the rest of the political parties should jointly nominate 1. The persons to be nominated, that's a procedure, by the political parties should meet the said criteria, which I've already mentioned, is the criteria that I used and which the political parties have accepted and which they implemented because they gave me really proper names. People of integrity, well-known reputation and whatnot. They gave me those names, and out of which we appointed that criteria can be used by the political parties in suggesting the names. This can, of course, be refined properly. This will enable the Commission to have persons of gravitas and also experts. The persons of gravitas, you see, people who, if you appoint, they can just say, yeah, that one they agree. You know, such a person, I can tell you, is not likely to apply and be subjected for shortlisting and for appearing before a panel of youngsters and whatnot and so on. He will not. But such a person can only be appointed by elder statesmen who are the party leaders or leaders of a coalition of parties, just directly without any problem. So this system will enable such persons to be appointed rather than this other system that we are having. And so once the political parties are appointed, then the balance of the commission can be appointed through the system that we have, with proper amendments to take care of the weaknesses that we have seen them have. For that, what I would suggest on the issue of reconstituting the Constitution. And probably the Political Parties Liaison Committee, constituted under Article 38 of the Political Parties Act, could play a role, and therefore the Act should be amended for it to play that role. The other suggestions I would suggest under this is that we are taking into account the decisions of the Supreme Court in the various election petitions and so on how the EC operates and functions. Some amendments ought to be made to the various laws to make clear that the chairman of the Electoral Commission does not act on his own, but he acts on the decision of the Commission, on a decision that collectively arrived at. And that before even they announce the presidential elections, they must then have looked at Form 34C, which shows the results of the presidential elections, and not just a summary of what the result of each county. That's not a verification, that's not tallying. But that law needs to be tightened so that we are on proper footing. The other point under you had me to address you on was audit of the 2022 presidential election. The Supreme Court has exclusive jurisdiction to hear and determine disputes relating to the elections to the office of the President. And his decision is final, Article 142. To my mind, the audit cannot change or reverse the decision of the Supreme Court through a constitutional and legal process. The audit is like a post-mortem, which cannot revive a dead body, but can tell you the cause of the death. And that's what we want to know in this audit. We want to know and identify the shortcomings, the weaknesses, the loopholes, or the shortfalls which should be rectified before the next election. In fact, this is the only way you can improve on the electoral processes and instill confidence of the people in it. In my mind, in fact, such audits that we are asking for, it should be held after every general election, proper audit, so that we can progressively improve our electoral systems. Many election observers have observed that normally the election process up to the polling day was credible and counting in the polling stations was technically professional. The problem lies in tallying, tabulation, and declaration of results. The issue of whether or not the server should be opened has engaged the public debate for some time now. The more debate on this matter goes on, the more suspicions are created or raised that where there is no smoke, there must be some fire. This has left a doubt or a lingering thought in the minds of people that it may not be that the figures in the portal are different from the figures in the server. That it may not be, but it could be so. And this may repeat itself in the next election. If the same is not cleared, if these doubts are not cleared, it could erode confidence in future elections and reduce the figure of people participating in such elections. I am therefore recommending and proposing that a law should be enacted to make servers automatically open and accessible to anyone, that as soon as the presidential elections are declared. In other words, as soon as the presidential elections are declared, and that's normally the last to be declared, the server should be open, and it should be open and accessible to whoever wants to access it. Rather than these arguments we have been having in 2013, 2017 in the court, go and open the observer. Oh, we cannot open because of some foreign company has some rights, I don't know, intellectual right over it, we can't just interfere. I think it should be very clear to whoever comes to assist us that the servers will be open. And we can only do that if we make it a law that the server will be open as soon as the results are declared. And will be accessible to every person. And even those who want to file petitions now, they can use it, the information there to file their petitions. Last, permit me, I'm a Pan-Africanist, and I've been a Pan-Africanist since I was in intermediate school, before I went to Alliance High School in the area of Mweshimiwa. But I've taken notice of the fact that the leaders of the two coalitions which constitute this committee are believers, are also Pan-Africanists and believers in the greater political, economic, social integration of East Africa and indeed Africa region as a whole, as a stepping stone for faster economic development for the benefit of our people. But what I'm going to say again is relevant to Article 43, is relevant to the rising costs, is relevant to stabilizing our economy and making sure that it can take off, can grow at an accelerated pace. In BBI, we recommended an amendment to the Constitution, and we had a new Article 10A, which reads as follows. 10A, regional integration and cohesion. This constitution embraces the goals of African unity and political confederation of the Eastern Africa region as integral towards attainment of sustainable development, prosperity for all, and stability. So I'm recommending to you that you also recommend such a clause in terms of the economic and social rights, that we also have that clause in our constitution. That was my little thing. Now, just for the verbal thing, number one, I looked at your terms of reference, and I wasn't sure whether you can recommend additional or reduction of counties. I was not very sure on that, and therefore I did not write my thoughts down. But since it appeared before you, just on the cuff, I can tell you that that's a very, very sensitive matter. I can say in a sense I was sort of responsible for the 47 counties, because if you follow the arguments at that time, some were suggesting over 100, some were suggesting about 14, some were suggesting 18, and there was no way forward. But when I suggested that we just follow the districts which had been recognized in law in the independent and boundaries on the Provincial and District Boundaries Act, which I piloted through Parliament in 1992, that we just accept that as a model, and so 47 counties, everyone agreed, and we have 47 counties. Now to take the very brave step to add, or take a very brave step to deduct, I suggest it's not a matter that can be lightly handled through a committee which has limited time and which has more pressing, important issues to decide. And therefore, I suggest that if you think that there's a merit in either adding and either reducing, maybe you recommend that the matter be separately handled properly by another body or whatever, people to look into the matter more carefully. That's number two. Two, I also had some suggestions, but I think here you are within your mandate. I've been a senator, and I'm glad the leader of majority is here. He worked very well, and he has really matured over a very short time. He keeps a very young man and he has matured so quickly. And actually there are two senators. One is him, and the other one is now the governor of Nandi. I have followed their career, and they have done very well. And I must pay a tribute for the system that allows such young people to come up and progress. I feel that if you have the time, you look into the place of the Senate. And I believe the place of the Senate should be strengthened in terms of legislation and in terms of everything else. And also to support the Senate Oversight Fund should be done. Look again, Abe, on this one, if you so wish, I could write something and hand it over to you within a limited time on how the Senate could be strengthened, because this is really something that's very, very, very close to my heart. And I think with that, if there's anything else you want me to address on, I can do it, but those are my initial thoughts. And thank you, Chairman, for being kind to me, in not interrupting me.
Yeah.
When I passed the 10-minute mark, I was looking at you very carefully. But as you know, strong to serve is our motto.
Thank you, AJ Emeritus, Senator Waswako, and indeed strong to serve. That is why I could not master the guts to interrupt you. And we definitely benefit from your immense knowledge and experience in government, and also in your later life as a legislator. We'll have a short plenary. Maybe if I may start, before I give someone else. You have spoken to an audit, which in my interpretation looks like you're speaking about an audit of the process, electoral process, or rather an evaluation of the electoral process as provided for in the Constitution, rather than what you have said, an audit of the election, and I believe election results would be like a post-mortem that you have said is like trying to resuscitate a dead body. Then if it is a process, how would you then propose that that electoral process be evaluated after every election? Because what I've heard you say is that you would want to see a system where there is an evaluation or an audit of the electoral process with a view to improving that process. And I think that's what, in my interpretation of reading of the Constitution, the drafters of the Constitution envisage, that after every election we shall be able to evaluate and see where can we improve on the processes to ensure that we have a credible electoral process. How would you suggest that that be done? By which body? Is it IBC, or which other body would you propose that they do that review of the Constitution? You have also spoken to direct appointments and put a very strong case for direct appointments of commissioners. Where does that sit in view of the new Constitution of 2010? Because granted that the experience you are speaking about is before this new Constitution, which requires that we have a very fair competitive process where people are given jobs on merit. Where would your proposal then to have direct appointments proposed by party leaders like Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka here, who is a party leader and a former vice president, and Honorable Eugene Wamalwa is also a party leader. There are party leaders who, at least Honorable Eugene's party has, I think, about 5 members of parliament and a number of county assembly members. They are party leaders without a single MCA, a single member of parliament or a senator or any elected official. And I could form a party, like we have given the case example of UDA that we formed about a year before the election, but today is the largest political party. Shall we not be disadvantaging those who are not yet party leaders, those who are yet to form parties, and therefore advantaging the likes of Eugene, Honorable Kalonzo, and other party leaders who already have established political parties? And would that fly directly contra the Constitution in terms of being discriminative? Maybe Your Excellency can go first, then Omar. Who else has Eugene?
It's okay.
That order.
Very good to see you, Madam Attorney General Emeritus. You talk about the school. But I want to humble myself before you say I was your pupil at Kaplan and Stratton. I like your spirit of regional integration. And of course, that notwithstanding, at some stage I became Vice President, the Attorney General. But that's the nature of things. I know your ability, your commitment to this country. You recall one time you wanted to resign, and I walked up to you and told him, you will not do that in the best interest of this country. You're a man I've seen who has received a lot of beating for being a stickler for the rule of law. 2 points. Like you, and you remember when we had the BBI sittings, I entered appearance and pitched for the role of the Senate. And since we cannot do much other than recommend that this issue be resolved, we heard from I think it was your successor, Professor Gilbert Muigai, also pitched for the role of the Senate. And you have one up against him because you've yourself served as a senator. What I liked about your selection of IB's commissioners, and I don't think it goes necessarily against what Kimani Ichung'wah is arguing, is to think of persons with gravitas. And you say they will never apply. And yet we know these are people who can never be compromised or bought with money. The likes of the late Harry Mole and the first mayor, I think Margaret Kenyatta was, when Mzee Moi that time saw these names, they are not necessarily pro-Kanu, he picked them on your advice. I think the same advice can be given to political parties so that we can get away from this ghost of stolen elections or allegations of stolen elections. So I like that, persons with gravitas, in addition to the experts, because today's expert, look at them, it goes through, by the way, before you came in, the selection panels here, and they were very gracious to the work of this committee. basically open-minded, and we thank them. But this whole thing about people with absolutely no political sense coming in, and they have no feeling whatsoever, and all they do is, and we know, I can tell you, as you know, we've been serious political players in the 2013 election, the 2017, and the 2022, which fall short of what those persons, the gravitas, achieved in 2002. When in fact, the outcome of that election made the whole world say the country with, I think, the most optimistic nation on earth after 2002 was Kenya. And we continue to build on that goodwill, this country will be very far. So, I just want to agree with you on the persons of gravitas. How you achieve that is something that we probably may want to develop with us, and not necessarily the strength of political. By the way, you're very clear, Kimani may not have listened. You say the major 2 or 3 political parties can present lists and the others 1. And you can also look at the existing ones. I mean, the persons perhaps will be worked upon by the selection panel. And then we end up with a product that can deliver this country to the next level when it comes to political party governance. The first thing the only thing I want you to address, because you didn't address it, because the rest of the points are very clear, in fact, absolutely well thought out, is the fidelity to political parties. This aggression on the party that ends up forming government, and in this case our friends in Kenya Kwanza. You will remember that immediately after elections, Azimio la Umoja One Kenya had the majority of members of parliament. But there are people in this country who do not believe in political party democracy or decency. They want just to be in government. And they went to government and caused a violation of what was even agreed at that time by way of registered coalitions with the registrar of political parties. First of all, what would you recommend with regard to the independence and the strengthening of the role of the office of the registrar of political parties? And again, fidelity to coalitions and coalition arrangements. Because then whoever takes over power at a particular time will say, I want the numbers so that I can carry out my legislative program. But it appears to me, if we are to borrow the example of what's happening in the United States today, the Republicans are the majority in Congress, and the American people are teaching us something. You negotiate and even end up like they did last night, say, let's leave out this matter of funding the war in Ukraine and look at national interest. And then everybody ends up feeling a bit more accommodated. President Biden is a president on the Democratic Party, but Senator McCarthy, of course, they want to impeach him now. The extremists on Republicans want to impeach him for considering what they have given. But since our Constitution 2010, I'm sure you'll agree, has drawn heavily from the American model, presidential system. I think that it probably will make this country be in good standing if we then can follow some of these ethos and avoid disorganizing, dismantling in a very dismissive manner political parties that take time to put together, coalition arrangements that they take time to put together. Of course, the idea of a post-election coalition is also possible, but immediately after an election, in a country as divided as we are, right now divided right in the middle, and then you have a head of state who probably said, I want to stamp great authority. He ends up doing that, but at what cost with regard to political party democracy? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Since everybody has said something as a writer before their remarks, I'll also say that my time at the Senate was made extremely useful by the likes of you, the late Haji, Right Murungi, you're able to clarify to Junior and I and those who cared to sit down with you a lot of the episodes of history where on the decisions that were taken at that time by the former president and some of the decisions that were made by very great leaders. And you told me that to publish your memoirs, some people have to be dead. So I heard you talk about your memoirs. I'm confident those people are now dead. you actually, that was the joke you had, that if you were to publish your memoirs, some people must not be there. And that meant they must be absent from life, from the earth. Two,
But they are successors and assigns. Estates could go for you.
You never clarified that. Maybe you can clarify now. Number two, you make a very flowery reference to the elections of 2002, and that there was a bipartisan IPC as a product of the IPPG. But also the margin of victory between Uhuru Kenyatta and the late Mwingi was so significant that no Tarakanite could turn it around. And in fact, I'm one of those who was very critical of the Moi administration. But one greatest act of statesmanship that is corroborated by both President William Ruto and former head of public service, Sadiq Oskei, is that when everybody was waiting for Moi to do the magic, the late President Moi asked Uhuru Kenyatta to concede, which led to the concession at Serena. We need to have a culture of conceding elections. Whether we are the country, in terms of big margins of victory, it is not specified. The only constitutional threshold that is required is 50 plus 1 vote and 25% in 24 counties. Americans vote that way every successive elections. Ghanaian presidents win with margins of 50,000 or 25,000. But we have radicalized and weaponized some of our base of supporters to constantly deny to accept victory by always blaming some top technology, some software, some server. Yet it is some of it is in open public gallery for it to be said. The server or the portal was simply a reflection of the server. We have since been informed by our Supreme Court team that the Supreme Court actually in 2022, the day after that we say all elections were contested and all of them read Raila and others versus, so the contestation has been from one center. But I wanted to ask, I don't know whether you were part of the Supreme Court process of the 2022 elections. Actually, an audit of the server was actually, and we will present it in the deliberations of this committee, was actually ordered by the Supreme Court. Both parties to the suit were actually asked to come. They were taken to those places. Others, even from ODM, had their notes and they wrote, and they all signed onto that report, upon which I'm told it is what informed part of the decision of the Supreme Court. But I totally agree with this proposal that we indeed need to make it law that servers be opened immediately after an election so that we conclude these elections conclusively. We do not need to repeat ourselves constantly that after every election we are putting out some IBC people out of work. We are victimizing and vilifying Kenyans. We are in the lead up to the elections. We are intimidating them. We are kidnapping them. We are murdering them. And those are some of the things we need to look into. But the final thing I wanted to ask: election cannot be the work of only political parties and politicians. I think all these Kenyans here, including the media, those who work in other sectors, are interested in the outcome of these elections. In fact, the politicians are a very insignificant part of the entire electoral process. But I've had Senator Kongo Mkeni ask about it. Are you aware of the Mozambican model, where the commission is appointed on account of party strength. And it is not usually cited as a best practice because it is in the interest of those commissioners in terms of survival to ensure that the party that nominated them continues to win. And that whole idea is also manifest, unfortunately, in the Cherera Four, who, in our view, are appointed in very close to the elections, who I think had a common plan, who now continue to peddle a common theory that is fairly tired about them not having been called into a commission meeting to decide whether to subvert or affirm the popular will of the Kenyan people. So I wanted you to speak to the partiality of these people who are nominated by political parties, who, in my estimation, are more prone to subvert an election than to affirm it. I think those are my. I totally agree with the strengthening of the Senate. It's not only strengthening of the Senate. We must take the courage and deal with this issue once and for all. This is a fallacy. Senate must be the upper house of parliament.
Thank you.
Senate, just a minute, must be the upper house of parliament. How do you get elected in 6 constituencies, 12 constituencies, and then you are told these two houses sit side by side? It's not practical, it's not logical.
Okay, thank you. Eugene?
Sorry.
Before Eugene, sit like a friend of us.
Yeah, sort of. But first, let me say my apologies. I came from the council.
You don't need to.
We had elections of the office bearers for the council of governors. But Chair, I'm just concerned that we, the committee, are taking too long to seek clarifications. Chair, you took about 15 minutes. Hassan has taken 15 minutes. There's a whole list of people. So just out of concern, can we go down?
Thank you.
You took long. Could we at least take 2-3 minutes?
That point is taken. Cicely, we hear you. Please, Eugene.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. The gentleman before us happens to be my namesake. The only thing I blame him for is I think he made the name Amos more popular than you did. But his name is actually Amos. You did. And one thing apart from sharing a name with him is to share love for Shakespeare. This gentleman with my late brother, true Shakespearean. And your presentation really touches one of Shakespeare's famous lines, to be or not to be, in Hamlet.
Indeed, there's a tide in the affairs of men. This is a tide.
Yes.
Don't catch it at its height.
Yes.
This country could go hayway. Anyway, continue. Yes.
Yes. So, the elephant in the room, and I'm very happy that you've touched on the critical issues. We have about 5 issues. We have 25 days to go. And you are not just speaking to us, you're making recommendations in terms of way forward, and I'm hoping our Secretariat is capturing this. And on each issue, you have left us with a clear recommendation. One of those is the issue of to be opened or not to be opened. To be or not to be opened, the service. That has been a hot political potato. But from what you have said today, I think we can pick a very clear recommendation that this matter should be a matter of course after the elections. Servers should be opened in the interest of transparency and accountability, and also to boost public confidence in our electoral processes, equipment, and everything. So it should not even be an issue that should be left for debate. What I wanted to ask, so that we can tap into your wisdom, is the IBC appeared before us, and we're looking at Article 88. So when you look at Article 88, H, 4H, it's very clear that it is the duty of IEBC, that is on page 40 of our Constitution, at the top, the first line, H. It's actually the cardinal duty of IEBC to ensure facilitation of, first of all, observation, and this they have been doing. They have been observers. facilitated, external observers, monitoring. I don't know if you've gotten it. 88 4H. 88 4H. Yeah. In my copy, it's on page 40. The first sentence at the top.
Oh, mine is
4H.
No, I came with it. Oh my goodness.
Are you looking at 88?
No, I came with the wrong.
Maybe the secretary can help you with the latest copy. But basically, there are three things that IBC is supposed to do to facilitate observation, and observers have been facilitated. To facilitate monitoring, that has been done externally. And from what you're proposing, the issue is evaluation of elections. Where IBC has been doing it, by themselves, and we had asked them whether this is not just self-appraisal. If we were to go by that provision of Article 88 4H in terms of evaluation of the elections, and to take your recommendation, and there are those who came before you who also recommended amendment so that it is provided in our law that there will be that audit done immediately after elections, servers opened automatically. Would that fall within your recommendation? And that you can make in your further written submissions. You can look at the law, and it will help this committee in terms of those recommendations. Then the other issue that you have made a very clear recommendation on, and I hope our secretary has captured it. So the issue of counties. That's a very sensitive issue. You were the AG, I think when we had the Akiwomi report, you did make your advice to that commission, and the tribal clashes of 92, 97, and whatever happened. So in terms of adding or subtracting, to have or not to have more counties, it's another hot political potato, and we are happy with your recommendation that perhaps we will not be looking at whether the matter is within our jurisdiction or it's beyond our mandate as per the motion passed by Parliament, and therefore recommendation, what I wanted your advice on, maybe when you're making your recommendation, whether that can fall within, of course, the purview of Article 188, where it's required that Parliament handles the issue of creation of new borders, counties and whatever. That would be very helpful in terms of a way forward and in terms of recommendations. Lastly, we have the issue of course, the two-thirds gender rule. We are looking for that clause that disappeared. I think you are saying that could really resolve the situation of the two-thirds gender rule. Because in the county assemblies, because of the law that we put there, Article 177, we have achieved in all our 47 county assemblies. But in our National Assembly and I think Parliament, we have a problem. I think you can help us find the clause that disappeared that could have actually resolved this. Be more specific in terms of recommending, so that we can pick it as part of a recommendation to resolve that issue. And lastly, the issue of Article 43 and matters of socio-economic rights. That also, I think you made some very, very good recommendations. It's an issue that, of course, our colleagues in Kenya Kwanza didn't want on the table. But you're saying it's a national crisis. Kenyan suffering don't belong to Kenya Kwanza or Azimio. They are all Kenyans suffering, regardless of how they voted. So there was the recommendation you were making about a national consultation, NCG. I think that's a very good recommendation, which I'm hoping will also capture. But what I wanted to ask is, I think during Kibaki's time, when we had this economic crisis, Kibaki came up with the economic recovery strategy and a team that was tasked to actually address the crisis at the time. I remember during Moi's time, when we had a similar crisis, he came up with a dream team that included people who are not even his supporters, a cross-cutting team of experts and people like Leakey and others who didn't agree with him politically, but a team that would be brought together broad-based and with the necessary expertise, economic and legal luminaries, if that could actually be recommended, so that we say it is no longer Kenya Kwanza affair, it's a national crisis we are facing. Let's come together and let's reason together.
Well, thank you. Maybe we give you time to respond now. Because in the interest of time and what Cicely was reminding us of, I think it's good. And again, thank you. We are not raising any issues. I think we're very clear.
Mine was just I thought you have raised a very important issue on the issue of bicameral house vis-a-vis the Senate.
It was very clear.
I want to make a small request that you don't make it off the cuff. You send us a write-up on your thoughts.
Yeah.
I had actually given him one myself when they were sitting at KICC. Maybe just to enrich it and see what we can do. Over to you, Bwana Amos Wako.
I wish to, this is my eyes are Mosaic. I'll start with which text should he use. Let me use this one so that I'm not now seeing it clearly. First of all, let me thank you for the comments you have made, which have all been very positive, and that's the way it should be. Mr. Chairman, your committee can even make proposals for amendment. I do not think that the proposal that political parties appoint in any way contradicts the Constitution, but if you feel it somehow it contradicts the Constitution, but you like the idea, then you can do a slight amendment. And if you want me to help you, I can do it. Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka, I just wish to confirm that there was a point when I thought I had had enough and I wanted to sign. And actually I had gotten good jobs somewhere. But he came, my friend came. He was, of course, my pupil before he became an advocate. So he was now taking care of his master, both spiritually and whatever. He came and really, with a long discussion, and he convinced me not to resign. And that's why I continued. At that time, continued in the next regime, and continued to make a record of 20 years over as Attorney General. And I'm always grateful to you for that. And that's what I've made. I don't know where I would be now if I made that decision to quit. Honorable Kalonzo, you asked about fidelity to political parties. To me, the situation to me, or that one is very, very clear. Kenya is a multi-party democratic state, and anything that undermines that should not be acceptable. But more important to me is that wananchi, the people, the sovereignty of this country rests in the people. And the people, you have gone to them and you have said that I'm now in this party, these are my programs, and on the basis of that, they have elected you. And maybe you decided to stand on that party because you knew that party was popular in that area, and therefore for you to be elected, you must be a member of that committee. So you are going there under false pretenses to be elected, and then soon after election to go somewhere else. That is deception to the people of this country, and we should be very firm on it. I agree with my if you go to the parliamentary record, what Tom Boyer said in the parliament, when they brought up that law that if you resign from the party which elected you, then you must go back to the people and have a by-election. I agree entirely with what Thomas Joseph Boyer said. You should have the courage just to resign and go, rather than say, I will not go, I'll use the processes of the tribunal or the court and so on, and by the time they decide, my time will be over. About such statements being made, and really, that is arrogant impunity of the highest order. For you to sort of agree, I've left, and you are now on the other side, and then you say, but nothing will happen to me because I'll use the system to stay where I am now until the next election. You know, it's a gross abuse of the system that is there. And such approach should be discouraged completely to me. So, we should make it easier for such people to resign, and not make it not so much for such people to resign, but we should make it easier for the institutions that deal with such matters to make quick decisions, and if there need be a by-election, let it be a by-election, rather than boasting that we are going to use the courts, the tribunals and so on, which will take you round and round until the 4 or 5 years are over. Really, all of us around this room, we should detest that type of approach to our politics. We are not maturing enough. By now we should have matured enough. Not even to say that should be an embarrassment to yourself. And they say so again with the pride. This is wrong. This is the rotten part of Kenyan politics is really that. So I think I've answered you, Mshoka, that one. Dr. Mari, yeah, thank you very much. We have been together for many years, Safari Park particularly, and so on. And the comments we made about 2002 elections, the margin of victory was such that they could not be tampered with. Who tells you that? I've been in the system. If I wanted to tamper with that, I would have done it. We have a recent example here in Gabon. Gabon, what happened? Did the Electoral Commission announce so-and-so has won, but when they opened the server, what happened? And yet the result of the election announced in Gabon, the gap was so wider than the 2002 elections. I think it was something like 17% versus 7%, but they had done it. I'm just saying this to give credit. Let's give the credit where it is due, that the Electoral Commission did a good job in that election and announced the results which reflected the wishes of the people of Kenya. And that Electoral Commission was actually composed of people, commissioners, nominated by political parties of the day. And that was possible. Now, when you say that people made by parties will be partial and so on, yeah, it's true. But you see, if you do not give political parties, particularly the 2-3 big ones, that chance to nominate their own people, if they have to go into the system of maneuvering, manipulating the selection system to make sure that the person is there, the type of person they will nominate will not be a person of gravitas. It will be a sycophant, and therefore he will be influencing. It will be there to disturb the situation and so on. So that's why it's good just to accept the situation the way it is. Say, you are the big guys, not nominate. But there should be people of gravitas, and they will do so. Rather than making them go under the table, manipulating, and making sure that their cycle funds are dominated. This question. But anyway, thank you very much for putting order in the discussions. I can tell you that Cecil Maria is the governor of Embu. We also have a claim on her in Busia. Yes. So we are very proud of her in Busia also. I think, you know, Madwa, you mentioned quite a number of things which, in a sense, I agree with. Actually, it was agreeing with my recommendations, but also suggesting a few things. This Article 88.4H, I think it can be used, but it will be useful if there was a clear clause to say that after every general election there will be that. Opening. Yeah. Make it clear, rather than just a general. I think that's basically what. Anything else?
Well, thank you.
I can say I'm available.
Yeah, thank you. Please enrich our thinking. Including, by the way, you know, this thing, Zambians went, and I think at some stage, Hassan and referring to again, talk about Frelimo experience in Mozambique and Renemo. But Zambians have actually decided, rather than this electronic transmission, they will do it manually. I don't want you to answer now, but perhaps give it some thought. Give it some thought.
But then you didn't answer whether you were in that petition as one of the lawyers in Dazmio.
Which one?
Dazmio petition.
No, not.
He wasn't.
Honorable Co-Chair, just to thank the Honorable Attorney General Emeritus. He's actually flown in from, he was out of the country at a family tragedy. And he just flew in for this. And we must really, really appreciate. And we've taken up a lot of your time. In fact, speaking from your brains, we should have paid you your FT fee notes. But because of the patriotism and your colleague, Honorable Gidu Mwigai was here also, this committee benefited greatly. We hope the sitting AG would also have time to come and, you know, you're adding value to our process. Thank you.
Thank you so much, my pupil master.
So we get your right up. Don't you get it?
Yeah?
We get your right.
Oh, yeah. I think Okonko, we're going to ask for a right up. If the chairman orders now,
please do. We wouldn't mind on the issue of the Bicameral house.
Yeah, I'll be more than
I am certain Senator Mwingi is interested more on more power getting to the Senate. And we shall allow it.
If you can give me 14 days. Well, that's too much.
We have a balance of 25 days as a committee.
Can do 7 days.
7 days?
No, as Eugene, my namesake, I confirm that I'm also called Eugene.
For the record.
I think it sort of indicated to you that Nikona
I think it can be 14 is fine. Okay, 14 is the fact that you also took time from outside the country to appear. It allow you the 14 days.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Asante sana. We have members, we have Kipra next. We still have a group of senators, Eno Kwambo and Tomo Jenda and Lenamo Nekina. We have agreed to allow the Ogier community 10 minutes. And we have agreed with them strictly 10 minutes because of time. And we still have another 4 groups. You know why I'm saying that? For Eugene and Omar, who never pays attention to what is going on in the meeting. You know why I'm saying that? Did you even hear what I'm saying? You and Eugene, you know why I'm saying that?
Chairman, this is all on camera.
But it's fair enough.
But it's fair, because the housekeeping, we just asking that
anytime Eugene keeps his comments brief.
no, for Eugene and Hassan Oman, it is not comments. Please keep your lectures brief.
Chair, what you need to buy is that they've made their comments for the entire day. Now they need to for the rest of the day.
I
will skip some.
Sure, maturity. That was very high.
No, you know Eugene and Omar, I think I want to agree with Senator Aaron.
Tumetumia bundles zetu.
I will skip some.
Zimeisha. Eugene, Kipra, are they here?
Yeah, they are.
The house.
Thank you. We will allow you to pass. Kipra, karibuni. We'll do a quick round of introduction. From my right, Senator Mwingi Okongo, Senator Nyamira, Honorable Amina Malindi, Honorable Eugene Wamalwa, Honorable Pio Wandai, just stepped out, Excellency Alonzo Musyoka, Senator Omar Hassan, Governor Cecily Mbarire, Senator Aaron Cheruyot, who is our majority leader. Mine is Kimani Ichung'wah. Karibu, you can equally do a quick introduction. We'll give you 10-15 minutes. Are you able to do yours in 10 minutes?
Thanks very much, Chair.
Is that you do not need affirmative action.
So I'm going to, thanks very much. We are really grateful to be here. I'll start by introducing my team. On my right, I have Dr. Elda Onsom, who is a director. And then on my left, I have Irene Mithia, again a director at the Institute. And my name is Rose Ngugi. I'm the executive director for Kipra. Yeah, thank you, sir.
Okay, Rose, I think what you didn't get what His Excellency was saying is saying you do not need affirmative action in terms of the female gender balance, but you may need affirmative action in terms of boy child. So, karibu.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think you asked whether we can do it in our contribution in 10 minutes. We'll try to do that. First of all, is to say that we received an invitation to this committee on the 19th of September to make a presentation on any of the 5 issues that the National Dialogue Committee is focusing on. And Kipra, we have a submission on one of the issues, and that is on issue on outstanding constitutional matters relating to the Article 43 of the Constitution, the cost of living, and related issues. The Article 43 of the Constitution on cost of living and related issues covers various aspects. This including economic and rights of everyone in Kenya. That covers one, highest attainable standard of health, adequate food and of acceptable quality, matters to do with housing, matters to do with clean water, social security and education. And this is what we are focusing on given that at the moment what we are facing is rising cost of living and also inequality. And we also look at this as basic needs for each and every Kenyan. And since independence, Sessional Paper number 10 of 1963 identified three basic issues for Kenyans, and that is matters to do with poverty, issues to do with hunger, and also health. And these things have continued even in the Vision 2030, the Big Four agenda, and the better. Matters to do with the basic needs of Kenyans have continued to carry the day. And of critical importance when it comes to cost of living is the fact that when you look at these basic needs, food, shelter, health, clothing, and education, they actually compete for income for households. And when we think about the bottom of the pyramid, it means that they are competing for very meager income. And without an increase in a commensurate increase in the income levels, then it means that the households are left with a very big headache on how they can allocate the resources to meet all the needs. We appreciate that the government has continuously continued to support matters to do with access to basic needs, but there are still some issues that we still feel still facing us, otherwise we would not be where we are today. So I'm going to look at two issues, and Dr. Elder will look at the other three. And the first one is to do with the adequacy of food and of acceptable quality. And start by saying that yes, the government has given priority to food production to achieve food and nutrition security. And a lot of efforts have been put on the supply side, whether we are talking about fertilizer subsidies to reduce the cost of production, investing in irrigation to ensure that we are not relying on rain-fed production, agricultural extension services so that we can have high-quality yields. Matters to do with the minimum wage, because without that you can not talk about the demand side of issues. Access to credit, because credit is where we smoothen our consumption today and tomorrow. Expansion of social protection, and social protection comes in very handy because we realize that there are many of us who are below poverty line, and we need to be protected to sustain our livelihood. In addition is making markets work, and there's a lot that is happening. Right now we have a Ministry of Cooperatives, a very key move forward in terms of not only aggregation but also supporting farmers to see that they can access markets. So what do we see as gaps in food supply? Of course, as a country, we are producing food, but there are circumstances when you find that the supply of food results in some areas having bumper harvest and other areas not having any food. In addition, you'll also find that when we have good rains, we have bumper harvests, but during drought situation, we find ourselves again struggling with food supply. It means that there's one element we are not exploiting, and this is the value addition, which we do through manufacturing. And manufacturing costs are high. One, given that for you to do food manufacturing, you're actually relying on inputs from agriculture, and agriculture output is actually susceptible to drought situations. So during drought situations, we find we don't have adequate raw materials for manufacturing. In addition, you'll notice that in manufacturing, food manufacturing, majority of the farms are actually micro and small enterprises, which of course we know face a lot of challenges, including technology, as well as sourcing for this raw material. So on the supply side then, you'll notice that we have not managed to smoothen between bumper harvests and when we have drought, and therefore we don't have adequate food. On the demand side, you'll notice that we have a registered minimum wage, and this minimum wage covers about 77% of our workers. We have seen over time that minimum wage has been actually reviewed upwards, and the last time that it was reviewed upwards is in 2022 by 12%. But the increase in the prices for essential commodities went up by 22%, which means that the purchasing power for households was actually reduced. And given that in Kenya, households spend over 50% of their budget in food, it means that with an increase in the food prices, without an increase in minimum wage, it leaves the households at a very weak position to manage their basic needs. Further is the food inflation. If you look at inflation in Kenya, a key significant contribution is food. Like last year, on average, the overall inflation was about 7.7%, with food inflation at 13.1%, almost double that. So anytime we therefore think about food, it should be the first priority, it should be our second priority, it should be the third priority if we have to manage the welfare of Kenyans. And for this reason, it's important to think about how we can diversify our crops, how we can support the production, as well as how we can actually enhance the earnings of the households so that they can smoothen their demand for food. And lastly is also the social security, social safety nets, which can come in handy for the vulnerable groups when we have food price shocks. And of course, we know that we are moving very well with the early warning system, but the key question is how we actually manage to put everything in order such that when we have drought, we don't face the same situation that we had with a prolonged drought that started in 2021.
Dr. Maybe if I could guide you, you're already 7 minutes and you've only tackled 1 out of 7 issues. Meaning if we move at that pace, we'll probably finish at 3 and we'll not be doing justice to the rest of the country and other stakeholders who have been waiting. I want to propose that don't take us through the entire paper. It's a very good paper, very well written. And just give us highlights.
Okay.
Don't go through item by item the way you are doing it.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry, I know you're an academician, so you are very tempted to take us through a class.
Yeah. And I'm also a former lecturer, so
yes.
also give a
I saw that danger, Mwalimu.
All right, so I've just talked about social safety net, so I can talk about social security. I'll take only 1 minute and say that yes, a lot has been done, but the kind of gaps that we are realizing is that if we look at, say for example, the hunger safety net programs, we give households about 2,000 per month. and these are mainly, for example, in rural areas. And the poverty line, going by the 2015-2016 household survey, is actually at about 1954, which means that we are giving them just at the poverty level. And when there is an increase in prices, this is not revealed upwards. So they are left actually, they actually drop down the poverty line. When it comes to poverty across the children, what you'll notice is that 4 out of every 4 children actually facing a significant level of poverty, which has implications in terms of their nutrition levels, and we shall discuss nutrition later. But I want to say at this point that when we don't take care of children at that very beginning, the country tends to lose about 6.9% of GDP to malnutrition, and a core element is in productivity, which is about 6.5% of GDP. So going forward then, we are saying that we need to look at the social protection such that in addition to minimum wage, we go beyond that and see to it that we are providing affordable transport, housing, universal health care, and education, so that we can leave the households with adequate budget that they can allocate to other things that they need in life. And also finally is to address matters to do with social mobility. From our research, we found that poor households tend to get to poor situations because even when we have social protection, which are not well targeted, then poor households are not benefiting. And if they don't benefit, they don't take their children to school. If they don't take their children to school, the children actually end up being poor. So to break that, it's critical that we look at how we target our social protection to allow for social mobility for those at the bottom of the pyramid. Chair, I'll give 5 minutes to my colleague here, Dr. Elder, and I'll tell her to use just 5 minutes.
I think 5 minutes on the high side.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. I'll take us through the following areas. I start with health and nutrition. The government, as we know, is implementing a number of interventions, starting with the universal health care. We also have a lot of support when it comes to provision of food. We have a lot of support when it comes to production of vaccines. However, a number of issues remain that are outstanding. First is the high out-of-pocket spending. And this is basically because we have emergence of non-communicable diseases, because the country is transitioning from the higher incidence of communicable diseases like malaria, which is being tackled, but now we have new diseases like hypertension, we have diabetes, we have cancer, among others. All those constitute the high cost of out-of-pocket. We have a mismatch between what we are spending and the outcomes of health, particularly when it comes to the overall human capital of the country. Stockouts in medical centers, particularly the public health institutions, and this is because of weaker supply chain systems, the distribution of human resources for health, and these include the doctors, the specialists, we have the community health workers, among others, which then means going forward we need to tackle this through the following: ensuring that we expand the provision of quality health. This tackles support for households, and this can be through the universal health coverage. We need to improve the budgetary allocation and utilization, because primary health is one of the default functions, and here the counties have a key role to play, particularly from the prevention, nutrition, and also ensuring that we access public utilities like water, which are key. We also need to look at the redistribution of healthcare workers. When it comes to housing, this is a key area because in the Article 43, each Kenyan has a right to quality housing, and this is housing that has amenities, but the key gaps can be tackled through exploring effective land use planning and management policies, which ensure that all the population in the rural and urban areas, particularly in the informal settlements, have access to housing that has amenities and housing that helps them attain the basic minimum as per the Constitution. We also need to balance between the development of our infrastructure such that every Kenyan can access that pertains to quality and also the standard of accommodation. When it comes to clean water and safe water, this we know the amendment of the Water Bill 2023, which supports partnerships, but we have outstanding issues which relate to access to clean and safe water in the informal settlements, arid and semi-arid lands, and even in the high potential areas where we still have poor water harvesting systems that we can leverage on as a country, and that then compromises the quality of water that the Kenyans are accessing. Going forward, then, we recommend the need to enhance investments and capacity development in rural and the informal settlements. We need to look at the water management, particularly wastewater treatment, which requires use of technology and also high capital investment. When it comes to water harvesting, it will be important to put legislative frameworks in place, particularly in the public places where we have high levels of space in terms of roofing that accommodates water when it rains, and that can be harvested for use not only in the urban areas where we have most housing, but also even in the rural areas through the piping. Finally, on education, in addition to the reforms that are taking place, we find gaps in terms of inequalities to access education, particularly in the post-primary education, which we know is key where skills are being developed. Interventions then could relate to addressing inequalities in access to quality education, and here technology has a key role, and hence need to look at how to have universal access to internet, particularly not only in schools, but in homes and in public places, looking at the safety of children online, and also improving school infrastructure by increasing also community awareness on their role in provision of education, both at the basic level and tertiary level, which we know is very key for skills development and also human capital development.
Well, we thank you. Does your colleague want to add anything in a minute? We don't want to feel deprived. Well, please notice, we thank you for accepting to even give us a written memorandum.
Thank you, Chair. We are satisfied with the submissions, and we look forward to further engagement. Thank you.
Well, thank you. We thank you so much. I don't know whether any of the colleagues here would want to interact with that submission.
Yeah, I just one very short question.
We shall hear Honorable Hassan Omar in absolute silence.
Yes, this is a very well done paper, and I always have a lot of respect for the work done by Kipra, and I can see once upon a time your former board chair, Linda Musumba, is here with us. My question is that as you make all these analysis about government interventions, particularly in terms of mitigating the cost of living, can you either forecast the impact it has had or forecast the impact it will have? Like you see, we said we did a G2G, government to government on the fuel. That was supposed to ease the pressure on the dollar, so that then we don't have scarcity of dollars like what is happening in Tanzania, and in addition to that, to try and keep the rate of the shilling against the dollar at least to mitigate it. We have had interventions with respect to subsidies on fertilizer. We've had an intervention in terms of removing, bringing oil and other food products at zero-rated import duty. So I want, are you able, maybe even if you don't have the answers now, to analyze, because this government is implementing a plan and you are a government agency, to analyze whether there is some impact with some of these interventions in the short and probably in the long term of some of these interventions with respect to mitigating the cost of living.
Yes.
I just want to really thank the three ladies. I think it's the first time we are having this kind of forum where the entire team is one of ladies. And it gives me some comfort. For the first time, we are not talking about the men. and just to let you, actually, I am very keen to know whether, just taking up from what Hassan has said, are you analyzing the impact of the government programs that are there in the plan in relation to the issues that you've raised? For example, I'd be very happy to hear from you what has been the impact of the subsidized fertilizer to farmers in relation to the last season, and has that improved the quantity and quality of food? Are we there? Are we there yet? And in your view, if listening to Kenyans and politicians, we want quick fixes. We want to wake up one morning and the government has subsidized fuel by half or by a quarter or whatever percentage. We want to wake up one day and we have subsidized maize meal so that it's now below 150. And we saw that attempt in the last regime. Between what happened in the last regime from a very independent position and what is being attempted currently by the current regime, which is the better way of sorting these issues? Is it those quick fixes, or is it long-term, well-calculated plans?
Chair, because I served in the last regime, I think our friends from Kenya Kwanza are saying their plan is working very well. We just want to know, because this plan is called Bottom-Up Economic Transformation Agenda, BETTER. This plan was supposed to make lives better for Kenyans. In 100 days, now it's a year. If this plan has worked, as my colleagues are saying, and we have a bumper harvest, why is it that we're importing yellow maize now? Can you explain to us? Many of us are farmers, we don't understand. It's very worrying. The last time we ate yellow maize, I was a little boy in the Nyayo era. Are things okay? Is the plan working?
May I clarify something about the yellow maize? And this is so important, especially for the Honorable Eugene Wamalwa. The yellow maize is coming here to strictly help us with livestock, animal feeds, poultry, livestock. Because what the government has realized upon analysis is that the cost of animal feeds is too high to keep farmers in profit. And that's why we are bringing in cheap yellow maize, not for human consumption, I repeat here, not for human consumption, but for animals. That's the purpose of the yellow maize. So Eugene Wamalwa, be sure of that. And that's why we're giving fertilizer for proper maize for human consumption.
Okay. I think, Chair, we live in this country. This is a country where we've had sugar being imported and mixed, brown and white. Once you open the door for yellow maize, what controls do we have? That's the worry of most farmers. We are harvesting. I just came from home now. Why you bring us yellow maize now when we have a bumper harvest?
If we, although His Excellency keeps encouraging dialogue, when we speak across the table to speak to each other, I think the fair thing is to allow Kipra to have that very balanced analysis to tell us, because for instance, speaking from where I says he's sitting, I may have the view that the subsidies, consumer subsidies that Honorable Eugene's government did in the last regime did not work. If anything, they left all those bills to this regime to pay. And therefore, Kipra would be in a better position to be able to analyze and tell us.
All of you guys were together. You're talking strange things to some of us. I can confirm that Imani Shunga was not there. We were all together.
We were all together initially before Eugene edged us out. So maybe Kipra should be able to analyze and tell us what is a more sustainable policy to pursue. Is it the consumer subsidies? Is it the producer subsidies? Is it what from your paper, I have seen you have spoken about wage increments and enforcing that, because the cost of living inevitably will keep rising, and some by factors beyond our control as a country, for instance, the fuel issue. But the challenge then are Kenyans having the levels of income to be able to afford that cost of living. So maybe you would strike a balance for us, and we don't expect you to necessarily have all the answers now. We would not mind a well-done paper like this one, probably to answer those questions if you're not in a position to answer now, unless you have a quick one as we close.
Thanks very much, Chair, and thanks very much, committee members. I think these are very exciting questions, and I want to say one is that yes, we can do impact, and we have done actually a very good analysis on the implications if all the proposals that have been given by the government were to be implemented. But I want to say that recently we have launched our report, the Kenya Economic Report, that was looking at the cost of living. And one of the key things that you'll notice from it, and that's why we are focusing a lot on the food, is that food actually taking over 50% of the income. It makes it the first, second, and third priority that we should get into. Transport costs, especially for those who are using matatus and the like, it also takes almost 10% for transport, and it is among, I think, the second in terms of contribution to the cost of living for Kenyans. So when we are able to reduce actually the cost for fuel, it means that you can reduce the cost for transport. It means that you can reduce the cost for distribution of foods, and therefore you can have an implication on the prices for food. Now, it's one thing to have food supply in the market, but it's another to say that I can access it. I may not access it because it's not affordable, but can I also be empowered to actually access it? And I can only access it if my income is also taken care of, which means that increase productivity for micro and small enterprises, for the farmers, they can reap higher and they can increase their incomes. Yeah? But at the same time, you say that you may not actually get that immediately. You may also find that there are those who are still struggling, and that's why matters to do with the social protection come in. And the social protection means that we need also to review not just the 2,000 that we are giving to the households, but we need also to ask ourselves, are we giving them something real, in real terms? What are we giving to them? So both the supply side and the demand side factors need to be taken into account so that we can see markets operating. And it does not mean that the government does not have a role. It has a very major role to ensure that it's able to put in appropriate regulations to ensure that one is able to access, and that the pricing process is also not, what did I say, it's not penalizing, especially those at the bottom of the pyramid.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Adi. We will encourage you to give us a more detailed analysis of such interventions for us to be able to interact with as we continue, because we may not have the time now to engage on everything. analyze all those things from fuel to the changes with the social health insurance from NHIF, because they all have a bearing on the cost of living, including proposals on what you are saying on income disparities among us Kenyans. Asante sana.
How soon can we have that?
Yeah, how soon can you be able to do that?
You want us to do another submission?
Yeah.
Additional submission?
Yes.
The previous one was asking 14 days. I don't know whether 10 days will be good.
Yes.
10 days, fair enough.
10 days. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr.
Thank you.
And your team. We have next the Ilchamus community. Please, Sergeant at Arms, usher them in quickly. And we agreed we are only giving them 10 minutes because they are not even in our program.
Then we can come and wait. We start.
Senators Karibu, then usher in the Chamus community to sit right behind Senator Wambua and Senator Ojeda. And not everybody. Sergeant at Arms, they must select a small group. We don't want the drama of people coming to sing here.
But now
Are you alone, Senator? Or Senator Agenda? There was an indication that you are mystified. You are
mystified. Why don't you allow us to listen to Jamus then, as you wait for your colleagues? Find out where they are.
But maybe they are not presenting
Chair, they are separate.
We were informed, Senator Wambua.
I need to be guided.
Yeah?
I need to be guided. I'm here on account of a memorandum that I sent to this team.
And in our meeting last week, we proposed, and I think it's Senator Mwingi who told us that there is a bicameral issue on the bicameral parliament that you are coming to present together with the Dama and Senator Tom Ojeda, because for the other individual member of parliament's memoranda, we had resolved to interact with the memoranda and avoid the face-to-face engagements, since we have not also accorded the same to other Kenyans. And we said in the spirit of fairness to other Kenyans, we interact with your memoranda just like we interact with all other Kenyans' memoranda, unless it is a group, and that's why you were convinced by Senator Mwingi there was a bicameral issue that you had to present together with Senator Ojeda and Senator Olekina. Just like we have a group of 27 members of parliament addressing the issue of proposed counties, and I know your memoranda also touched on a proposed county of Mwingi. I'll probably propose, if it is that's the issue you are here on, probably it's fairer to join the other group so that we listen to you on the issue of bicameralism.
Chair, let me just intervene. Just first of all, for us to confirm whether the two other senators are there or not. But even if they aren't there, since he has come at the time that we allotted for them, would they touch him? Yes. For just a few minutes.
Even if
then we excuse him.
Yeah. No, you know the way Mheshimiwa Omar is putting this matter, we start on the wrong footing.
It's on the wrong footing.
No, it's okay.
Omar is not on record. Maybe you respond to what I have said, and Honorable Bio. Okay, let me go on record.
Yeah.
Co-chair, first of all, I'm happy that you've invited me to make a presentation to this team. Those conversations that you had with the team about then what it is that I'll come and present on were not communicated to me.
Okay.
So if you had an internal communication amongst yourselves and you did not inform me, it would be very unfair, co-chair, to expect that I have come from Kitui to make a point on Mwingi County. Wait, listen to you, wait. To make a point on Mwingi County, yes. Then you tell me, Senator, I have to wait to my colleagues.
I just want confirmation from the Secretariat that was not communicated because that are the instructions we gave. Amijan, is he here?
In an event, Chair, since we had agreed we hear him, let's just hear him. Avoid those other things, and let's
we hear you?
Yeah.
10 minutes. We have a whole list, Senator.
Hey, that's okay. I'll make it 5 minutes.
Please, we would be happy if it was even 5.
That's okay. So I thank the team for inviting me, and as I said, my presentation is on a proposal that I sent to this team on a constitutional matter in relation to the creation of Mwingi County. Co-chairs, for the information of this team, this is not a conversation that started yesterday. It's a matter that I've been engaged in since 2019. Those of your colleagues who sat with me in the Senate between 2017 and 2022 will remember that I brought this proposal to the Senate, and that time actually Omogedi was the chair of the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee. When we were accorded an opportunity to present memoranda to the then BBI, I made the same presentation. And so I will take you through what it is that I'm thinking, and I will leave the final decision to the team. Co-chairs, I am guided by Article 6 of the Constitution of Kenya, Article 6.1, that provides that the territory of Kenya is divided into the counties specified in the first schedule. By that statement alone, it should be noted that the drafters of the Constitution were alive to the fact that there is no magic number in number 47. That the first schedule can be amended to create more counties or even to reduce the number of counties. So on the basis of that chapter 6.1 of the Constitution, I do make a presentation on a proposal to create a second county in Kitui called Mwingi. My idea, co-chairs, is what I would call authentic. It's an original, authentic idea. I do understand, as you have mentioned, co-chair, there is also a caucus of members of the National Assembly who are also pushing the agenda of creating additional counties in this country. Respectively, Mr. Chairman, a lot of that, again, is a Me Too attitude, that now that some people are asking for counties, will also ask for additional counties. My idea is authentic in the sense that, Mr. Chairs, the genesis of the creation of counties in this country under the 2010 Constitution was informed by a decision in Naivasha that the districts that had been created and gazetted around 92, 93, 1992, 93 would be given a county status. At that time, co-chairs, there were 48 districts that were created up to and including 92-93. What the mistake was, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairs, is that the districts that were created around the same time that Mwingi district was created from Kitui district, including Tharaka-Nithi from Meru and Makueni from Machakos, were given county status because they had been gazetted as districts. Unfortunately, at creation, Mwingi district was not immediately gazetted, and for that reason, we lost out on a county status. The chairs, it is the same challenge that I found when I was elected the senator of Kitui County, that Kitui County had lost out on benefiting from the equalization fund because again of technical issues. It took my personal intervention in the offices of the CRA to argue that it would look bad in the eyes of an ordinary Kenyan to hear that some sections in Kiambu and Nyeri and Murang'a are benefiting from the equalization fund and not a single area in Kitui had been listed to benefit from the equalization fund. And that is how then the formula of moving from classifying marginalized areas in regard to counties was changed, and now they started looking at areas, villages, locations, where then you would have pockets of marginalization for counties to begin to benefit from the equalization fund. Co-chairs, my proposal is an attempt to cure an injustice vested and visited on the people of Mwingi, and by extension the entire Lower Eastern region, on account of a failure by the Office of the Attorney General to gazette a district. And I am urging this committee, the National Dialogue Committee, not to grant the invitation from any quarter to be bystanders as the people of Mwingi continue to suffer this injustice. Co-chairs and members, the object of this proposal, which I have presented to you, is to amend the Constitution of Kenya and to ensure that resources and services are brought closer to the people by splitting the expansive Kitui County into 2 counties. For the information of these members and for the record, the distance between the southern farthest end of Kitui, which is Athi town, to the farthest northern end of Kitui, which is Usweni, is 350 kilometers. The distance from Bomet to Nairobi, traversing Narok County, Nakuru County, Kiambu County and Nairobi, is 228 kilometers. So as you travel from Bomet to Nairobi, you have only covered half of Kitui County. And the beauty of our county is that it is settled all over. You wouldn't say that there are regions in Kitui County that have no settlements. So the distance to service, to take service to the people in the farthest end of the county is a challenge to the administrators, and that is why we are asking this committee, if and when, because I believe that there will be an opportunity to open the Constitution. If then that opportunity is availed, then you should consider correcting the injustice, the technicality on Mwingi, and I'm saying that we have 3 constituencies in Mwingi, which is Mwingi Central, Mwingi West, and Mwingi North, and a total number of 15 wards, which would constitute a county either from Kitui, with a population of about 450,000 people, according to the 2019 annual census report. The Speaker, the Chair, as I move towards closure, there have been arguments against this push, and you heard them on the floor. There are people who will argue that it is too expensive to create an additional county. There are others who argue that why Kitui and not X or Y county. My response to that, co-chairs, is that anybody arguing about the expenses of creating a new county is just being unrealistic. And if you think that democracy is expensive, we could try anarchy. There is nothing in expenses that should stop a people, a population, from enjoying the benefits of devolution. Because we have comparative jurisdiction, co-chairs. We have counties in this country that are much smaller than the proposed Mwingi county, much smaller. I could mention just 2 or 3 of them. Kirinyaga County, with a landmass of 1,479 square kilometers, is a county. In fact, I make this joke, co-chairs, about Kirinyaga County, that the county is so small, and I'm not saying that they should be denied their status, no. They're so small that even the Catholic Church has not established a diocese in Kirinyaga. It is administered from Murang'a, and yet they have a county status. You go to Lamu with 2 constituencies, go to Isiolo with 2 constituencies. You go to Samburu with 3 constituencies. The Rakanithi, which is even smaller than Kirinyaga, with 3 constituencies. Co-chairs, it is my submission. I see the co-chair wants to interrupt me. You can.
Thank you. Not to interrupt, I was just prompting you to wind up, as I also noted that you are avoiding mentioning Nyamira, which is in your document, because the Senator Okongo is here. I am